Okay, I think we're going to get started now. So thank you everyone for joining us today and welcome to today's session. I'm Bonnie Gao, a policy analyst with the Renewable and Electrical Energy Division here at Natural Resources Canada. And today's session will cover the equity, diversity, and inclusion requirements for the Smart Renewables and Electrification Pathways program that NRCan launched recently. Before I get started, I would like to acknowledge that where I am today here in Waterloo is situated on the Haldimand Tract, land that was granted to the Haudenosaunee of the Six Nations of the Grand River and are within the territory of the neutral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee peoples. And today I am joined by my colleagues, Megan Brunton and Bronwyn Lazowski. Before we continue, there's a few housekeeping items. If everyone could leave their questions to the end of today's presentation, we'll be having a discussion at the end. And feel free to put your questions in the Q&A box as we go through this presentation. And if you're calling by phone, please send a quick email to our program inbox, which is in the slide there, to let us know who you are. All right, so today's presentation will focus on the equity, diversity, and inclusion requirements of our program. We will have space for discussion at the end to make sure that there's an opportunity for everyone to share their experiences and to ask questions. We will be compiling a list of the FAQs from discussions today, and that will be made available on our website in a few weeks. We are also recording this webinar, and that recording will be made available at a later date through an emailed link. So the Government of Canada has set a target for Canada to become a net zero emitter by 2050. Canada already has a huge advantage to achieving this goal because our grid provides power that is both clean and affordable, with 82% of our generation coming from non-emitting sources. Despite this, electricity currently accounts for less than 20% of Canada's overall energy use across our economy. So becoming a net zero emitter by 2050 will require 3 decisive steps: expanding our clean electricity supply, using more clean power, and using energy smarter. And this will require major infrastructure investments by all levels of government in order to build new non-emitting electricity capacity and to upgrade existing grid infrastructure. An affordable supply of clean and reliable power is essential to maintaining Canada's competitiveness and our high quality of life. The federal government can play a role in mitigating the impacts of transforming the grid on ratepayers. So in 2020, the Fall Economic Statement presented Canada's vision for a green economic recovery that is inclusive, sustainable, and creates good jobs for Canadians. And in addition, the Healthy Environment and Healthy Economy Climate Plan, released in December of 2020, has committed additional investments of $964 million over 4 years to advance smart renewable energy and grid modernization projects. And this is the initiative that we're speaking on today. So this brings us to our program, the Smart Renewables and Electrification Pathways Program, or SREPs. The objective of the program is to support the transition to a cleaner electricity grid and to create the foundational operational capabilities in our grid today to support the net zero economy of 2050. In addition to that, we recognize the underrepresentation of women, gender diverse, Indigenous peoples, racialized people, and others in the electricity and renewable energy sector, and how this has been further exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic. This program merges the importance of increasing clean energy generation capacity with the need to modernize our grids and electricity system operations, while supporting the increased equity, diversity, and inclusivity needed in this sector. So the program meets these objectives in a 3-pronged approach. The program will support new energy generation coming online and ensuring it is able to provide the services grid operators need, utilities and system operators updating their software and hardware, as well as the creation of equity, diversity, and inclusion plans to increase equity in these sectors. I will now pass it on to my colleague, Megan Brunton.
Hi, everyone. So now we'll dive into a deeper examination of our equity, diversity, and inclusion requirements for the SREPs program. I'll be referring to sections in the applicant guide and also attachment S3, which is entitled EDI Plan Template. You may want to have these handy as we continue through the presentation. So next slide, please. As I walk you through this slide, you may refer to Appendix C of the applicant guide for more detail. The program requires the applicant to have an EDI plan. Here's a flowchart to help you determine your path to completing an EDI plan. All plans must have an anti-discrimination policy, an anti-racism policy, and a workforce EDI training plan. Moving to the next level of the decision tree, applicants can choose if they prefer to create their own EDI plan or if they prefer to sign on to a public EDI commitment. These two options have different requirements, which we will explore on the following slide. The annex section of this presentation has examples of anti-discrimination policy and an anti-racism policy, as well as a workforce EDI plan. These two options have different requirements, as you can see. And for this, you may refer to Appendix C of the applicant guide. Self-generated plans are created by the applicant to reflect the specific conditions of the workplace, including the size of the workforce and how EDI could be incorporated into workplace culture. The application package has a suggested template in attachment S3 under section 4, as previously mentioned. And also the program has compiled sources on EDI activities that could be undertaken by the applicant to fulfill EDI objectives. And we will cover these shortly. The public commitment goal is another option for applicants, in which the applicant signs on to a public commitment that centers on equity, diversity, and inclusion. And there are examples of this in the annex of this deck, and also on a slide that is coming up. The public commitment could be a regional, federal, municipal, or sector-driven commitment that aligns with transforming equity, diversity, and inclusion in the workforce. The applicant must provide proof of their commitment, including the name of the organization delivering the public commitment, the name of the public commitment, details of the public commitment, and we'll cover which details in a following slide, how the public commitment aligns with the goals of the program, and written confirmation and proof of signing on to the public commitment from the coordinating organization. Regardless of the pathway you choose, NRCan is committed to supporting your work in EDI. Depending on demand, we may consider hosting an NRCan-led workshop to support self-generated plan development. Further into the future, NRCan plans to hold a symposium on EDI in the electricity and renewable energy sectors. This will bring our proponents together to discuss their organization's EDI journey to facilitate best practices and knowledge sharing, and to establish a diverse peer-to-peer network. Let's focus in on the self-generated plans on the next slide. As I go through this slide and the next, you may refer to attachment S3 under section 3 in the application package. Applicants choosing this EDI path fit into one of 4 organization types: Indigenous recipient and small private corporation, large private corporation, and limited partnership. I will cover limited partnerships on the following slide. We've created these categories because the program acknowledges that each organization has differing capacities to fulfill EDI plans. We expect that larger organizations will have more ability to carry out EDI activities. Organizations with fewer people and newly formed entities, such as limited partnerships, may have limited capability to fulfill extensive EDI plans due to organization size. Therefore, the program expects fewer activities from these organizations. Indigenous recipients will have fewer activities in their EDI plans, as these organizations may also have a smaller workforce. The program acknowledges that the very nature of Indigenous recipients helps to bring underrepresented groups into the workforce. The slide titled EDI activities, further in this deck, has a list of potential activities organizations could undertake in their EDI plan. We'll review this in more detail in a few minutes. For Indigenous recipients and small private corporations, fewer than 50 people, we are asking for their plans to include at least 2 activities from the list, in addition to the mandatory anti-discrimination policy, anti-racism policy, and the workforce EDI training plan, as discussed in a previous slide. And of course, you can include more activities if you want. For large private corporations, which are 50 people or more, we are asking for their EDI plans to include at least 4 activities from the list, in addition to the mandatory anti-discrimination policy, anti-racism policy, and the workforce EDI training plan, as discussed in the slide previously. And of course, again, you can include more activities if you'd like. Let's continue on to limited partnerships in the next slide. For limited partnerships, we are asking EDI plans to include 2 or more activities from this list on the slide. The program understands that limited partnerships are a common applicant to this type of program and mostly exist on paper rather than having a defined workforce. We have narrowed down EDI activities that are suitable for limited partnership applicants. EDI activities for limited partnerships include committing to higher diversity in the geographic area of the project, committing to gender parity and diversity on the management team, contracting significant work to Indigenous companies or companies with EDI plans, endeavoring to participate in or facilitate EDI activities in the community, and operating in alignment with an EDI plan of a parent company. Now let's turn to the list of EDI activities on the next slide for Indigenous recipients, small private corporations, and large private corporations. These are the broad categories for EDI activities. See attachment S3 under section 5 in your application package for more detailed examples. Applicants can choose activities focusing on one of these categories, or you can mix and match from several different categories. As a few quick examples of activities that would fit into these categories listed here, under management representation, an organization could commit to increasing the number of women or the number of racialized people in management positions. Under governance and policies, an organization could commit to creating hiring boards that include Indigenous people. Under inclusion efforts, an organization could commit to establishing gender-neutral washrooms throughout its workplaces, or to create a daycare program to help parents in the organization balance work and family life. There are other examples of EDI activities in the EDI guidelines. The program is open to your innovative activities as long as they meet our program objectives with EDI. We will review your ideas for alignment. Let's look at our suggested EDI plan template on the next slide. We've created this template to help you organize your ideas. You can use the template or not, it's entirely up to you. The template is located in the application package in attachment S3, section 4. The organization should decide for itself what is possible and include timelines and suggested activities, suggested actions for each activity. And again, note that every EDI plan must have an anti-discrimination policy, an anti-racism policy, and a workforce EDI training plan. Please see the annex of this presentation for an example of an EDI plan. I will now turn to my colleague Bronwyn to provide details on the public commitment option on the next slide. Bronwyn?
Hi, thanks, Megan. So now let's shift away from the self-generated EDI plans and discuss the requirements for the public commitment option for this program. For this slide, you may refer to Applicant Guide Appendix C for additional information. So what if an organization prefers to sign on to a public commitment? We are open to various public commitments that focus on EDI. On the right-hand side of this slide, you can see a few examples that we have collected that align with the program objectives. In some cases, you may already be signed on to such a commitment. And if you are, you can certainly continue your work under that commitment as long as it aligns with the program objectives. The program commitment that organizations sign on to must be related to, but is not limited to, reducing barriers to entry into the workforce, commitments to workplace equity, diversity, and inclusion measures, goals for representation in the workplace and leadership, as well as commitments to the advancement of underrepresented persons within the workplace. It is also important to note that the commitment needs to be aligned with the objectives of the program, specifically advancing the participation of multiple underrepresented groups within the energy sector. Within the annex of the applicant guide, there are more suggestions for potential public commitments and the details required for the applications. So let's dive into that further in the next slide. If you choose the public commitment option, the program does require some information about the pledge that you will be taking. We need to see enough detail to understand the commitment and how you will fulfill the commitment throughout the program. We also need to see how the commitment aligns to the program objectives. The information that we ask for includes the name of the public commitment, the organization delivering the public commitment, and the details of the public commitment. The details that we require include objectives of this commitment and its timeframes, the measurements and metrics that are used for the commitment, as well as any related specifics of this commitment. In addition, we require an overview of how your organization will meet the public commitment. Within this application, applicants are also required to identify broader elements related to the project, including how the public commitment aligns with the program's goals, and written confirmation and proof of signing on to the public commitment from the coordinating organization. Additional information regarding the public commitment option for the application can be found within the applicant guide. But throughout this process, we will be requiring applicants to report and measure on their progress in these areas, which we will talk about in this next slide. All applicants are required to report on their EDI plans through the annual progress report and the final report. We will provide a template for the annual report as part of this process. We will ask about jobs created and for whom. This can include women, youth, racialized people, indigenous persons, gender diverse persons, and persons with disabilities. The reason we ask for this is because we need to see if our program is reaching our program objectives, and we are collecting this aggregated data to support future program design. Once the program is complete, we also plan on bringing all of our proponents together in a symposium on EDI in the electricity sector, so we can understand lessons learned and the progress that has been made in this area, and more details are to come. As we move to the next slide, we now thank you for listening to today's presentation. Questions and any other feedback that you may have can be directed to our program email inbox, which we have listed on this slide. You can also find additional program information on our program website, which we also have listed on this slide.